2, 1. Hey guys, welcome back. This is Edwicta.
This is Merps, and you're seeing the Many Words expansion Boomsday extravaganza review.
Yeah, tier list edition. So we've gotten past the fluffy stuff that, those plebs listen to and they go into the arena. Now we're getting deep. Now we're getting deep into the lab, our own lab. We're going with this Boomsday mad scientist theme here. And what we do, and what we have done for like 2 years now, is create an algorithm that actually tells you what the cards are scored and how good they will be in the arena. And it predicts the meta, and it tells you how many you'll see based if you draft based on the tier list, and it does all sorts of things. I'm going to explain some of that to you guys right now. This video is going to be like 15 minutes, no longer than that, and then we'll jump into the neutral cards. But it's hard to like know what a 112 value means, especially when you're comparing that to a 123 value without knowing a little bit about what's going on here. And we have our Lightforge tier list team that like works, night and day during this time when the release is happening to make sure all these cards are in and all these cards are actually running on the algorithm. So me and Merps are not sitting out here anymore saying like, I think Replicating Menace is a 132. No, I think it's a 128. Which one should we go with? What are our reasons? Like, we do that to make sure the algorithm is not doing something wrong. But in the end, we always check it against the algorithm, and we fix the algorithm if we need to in order so that everything else is right. Because usually, if one card is wrong, not just that card, right? It's like a whole bunch of stuff. So you also often see when metas change, our algorithm updates, and like all the cards move by like 5 to 10 points. And that's because it's doing stuff, So one thing I want to make clear right off the bat is that the only stats we use are offering stats. That's it. And we use offering stats because they tell us what the rules of the game are. We do not believe that average win rates correspond to how good a card is. We don't believe that because there's a crap ton of evidence, also known as the Blizzard bucketing system, that is very, very, very convincing that average player win rates are not terribly well connected to how good cards are. And we've had that position for a very long time, and so we don't see a need to use stats. And we actually think if you have a system that uses stats, it's more noise than anything else, and it'll make you go down the wrong path. Instead, we take the raw values, right? Like how much tempo does this card give? How much card advantage? What turn do you play it? What are the penalties that if you have to hold the card? What can it synergize with, right? Like how often are you going to hit that synergy? Does the synergy have initiative? Does this card have initiative? What's the replacement value of a particular card, right? Like the card played on curve is different than card played off turn. What if you have to hold a card for Omega value later on? We made a pretty intricate Omega system. Magnetic took us a while to nail down. We do this for every meta. And as of this point, like 99.9% of cards that you will see in the arena played are 100% algorithm. And that's not to say it wasn't necessarily initially algorithmed incorrectly and then we went and fixed it, but it is 100% algorithm now at this point. And that's, we're quite proud of that. So the Lightforge tier list is different than other tier lists because nobody else does this. There is not a single algorithmic tier list here, and it's taken us years to put this together with several people. So we don't get paid for this, so it's just like a labor of love, and we're going to do more interesting things with the system, but we're kind of working on our own pace. People often ask when the drafter is coming out. We want to make sure the base is very secure first, right? If you look at current drafters out there, they don't have a base. They're using like a number from a tier list that someone made up or stats, and then they're just adjusting by like, are there more mechs? Higher score for something that uses mechs, right? It's imprecise and it does not adjust to metas very well. Whereas if we start at a fundamental level, we'll get better results. So this is number one in terms of the priority. One thing we try to keep always is to make 100 the center point of our tier list. That means that if you were to just take a look at all of the cards, 100 is your middle card, and when you average them, and that gives you an idea of what the average card is worth. Now, the average card in your hand is going to be a different value than the average card, depending on how Blizzard does offering rates. Right? In the last expansion, it was something like a 120, 125. In this expansion, it's probably going to be something more like a 115, if not like a 110, because there's a drastic drop in value with the way the offering odds are working. But regardless, there's a difference that should be noted. And every percentage is a raw percentage. So when it goes down, like a Sandbinder is worth like 80% of a card that's 100, like a Bright-Eyed Scout or like a Sunborn Valkyr. That's you can make that statement, and that is true. That's not just saying like, oh, a Sandbinder is somewhat worse than a Sunborn Valkyr. It's exactly 20% worse. Like, that's the statement we're making with every number that we put here. All the numbers are meaningful. And you can see as it goes to the top that there are some cards that are very good, right? Stoneskin Basilisk, Primordial Drake, Giggling Inventor, but it doesn't go too out of control, right? Nothing on the neutral side is really more than like a little more than 50% better than your average neutral card. Usually no more than 50% better than the average neutral card in your deck. When you go to classes, on the other hand, if you look at Ultimate Infestation here, it gets a little bit more crazy. Actually, the most crazy things are a mage, but people don't complain as much about it as UI. Meteor is insane. Primordial Glyph is insane. On the other hand, things that people complain about a lot may not actually be that terribly insane. They're just not playing against it the correct way. Like, Spiker Steed always gets huge complaints. It's a great card. It's not really, like, game-breakingly good. Whereas cards like Silver Sword are kind of like, once it gets into 200s level, it really should not exist. Anything over a 150, I kind of don't like. But a lot of like basic cards are above 150, right? Like if you go to Mage, Flame Strike is even a 204, right? Fireball is a 161. Like you're not going to avoid these cards. But it's Hearthstone. It's fundamentally a little bit imbalanced between card value. That's just how the game was made, and Blizzard kind of has to live with that. Anyway, that's just a little peek at what these numbers mean and how to interpret these numbers. So we keep making updates to things. In the latest update, actually an update about a month ago, we made the curve a lot more complicated in terms of figuring out how the curve exactly works and how mulligans work and how that affects the curve and how cards act as replacements. So like on turn 5, we know that a 3-mana card and a 2-mana card, if they are sufficiently statted enough, can make up for the curve, and to what degree they can make up for the curve. And we have that built into the value. We have like, basically we're not sitting here and saying this is worth X. It's all kind of interconnected now. We used to be saying like, if you get a normal statted minion on turn 2, like a 5 statted minion, and we play around with some matchups, we see how it works on the board, you get X number of points, and if you're off of that, you get whatever percentage of that. Now it's all actually purely mapped out, where we don't even provide it with the initial number. It's just playing against itself. So yeah, so that's the tier list, and we're very happy with it at this point. Like, I'm pretty sure in Boomsday, and we don't have it all done yet. I want to say we have like 97% of the cards done yet. The ones we don't have done are one neutral card for one class, and 2 class legendaries. But that may be done by the time the game is released. They took a long time, and so we didn't. So we have put it off in order to get this out. So this may be, no promises yet, and nor would it really matter to the legendary cards. But Boomsday may be the first time that the Lightforge tier list starts out on day 1, 100% algorithm. And that would be quite an accomplishment, I think. Okay. So Tachi Derp says toxologist. Yes, Tachi, you are right. It is toxologist. Toxologist in one class is not being done correctly. We need to figure out what the heck is happening there. Okay. Anyway, this is the Lightforge tier list, and you will see when we talk about the neutrals and when we talk about the classes, us referencing this system, right? So how do you use this tier list? Well, the easiest way to use the tier list is to look at the bucket system right now. We have a new view called buckets, which we didn't have before. We introduced it like a month ago. And now that Blizzard gave us the data, it made it so much easier. We were partnered with Arena Drafts, which provided us the data or the resulting buckets from the data that they were gathering. But now we have like actual data from Blizzard about where these tier lists are. I mean, where these buckets are. So you can see kind of where the cards are bucketed. And this one currently does not have the new cards in yet, but it will. It's just I need to refresh it. You know, you can see, like, for example, in Hunter, everything's bucketed in this one bucket. That's a lot of class cards. There's fewer class cards elsewhere, and you can make your evaluation. Like, if you look at this bucket, for example, this bottom half of the third bucket, well, Volbrute, Skitterer, and Gladiator's Longbow especially look really highly bucketed. Should probably take those cards. On the other hand, Walnut Sprite, you should not take. In fact, Walnut Sprite and Tangle for Mystic were so bad that they actually got moved down a bucket by Blizzard in the 12.0 update, which we don't reflect yet, but we will once this tier list is. So you can kind of see a lot of the Night Prowler also got moved down. Like, I'm pretty sure we're significantly more accurate than Blizzard's internal tier list, both in terms of how we track how a card is would perform. I mean, mostly how it would perform in the hands of a good player, right? So Blizzard has some issues where they just have a lot of noise and they can't filter it out, and they have some fundamental design issues where they're like, well, you know, if most players suck with the card because it's hard to play, we don't want to just like they really have no way of putting it in a higher bucket, right? They're not going to go out and be like, we're only going to take people who average 5 wins or more in the arena in our bucket. They're not doing that. So there are cards that are just going to be systematically under bucket. Like any card that has poison, for example, like any small card that has poison, is going to be systematically under bucketed. Why? Well, because poisonous minions, you have to play like kind of getting a normal amount of value for it. Like a Gastropod played on turn 2 to kill a 3/2 or a 2/3, great. Whereas a lot of players, especially ones that are less good, are like, oh, I want to hold it and kill off a 7/7. Well, you lost tempo, now you're going to lose. Card draw, always under bucketed, right? Because card draws lead to longer games, which lead to more decisions, which usually means the better player wins more frequently. You don't really want to do that if you are not the better player. A lot of other things are systematically misbucketed. I do like that the meta has shifted to the point where 2-drops are no longer as systematically misbucketed or overbucketed as they used to be. Because now more aggro strategies are becoming more viable. There was a time where, because 2-drops generally favor less, like there's less thought to be used if you're playing more of a Zoo style mid-range deck that has a really good curve, they were all systemically over bucketed and you couldn't like get a good curve. But that's less so the case. You still have to pay for your 2-drops, but they're now like maybe 1 bucket over bucketed, maybe half a bucket over bucketed, not like 2 buckets over bucketed. So it's a good way to figure stuff out. I really like this new bucket view. We also have the classic view, which is probably what you're very used to. This is like from way back in the day of anti-gravity tier list and Trump tier list. This is the view that it's been in. You can sort it by whatever. This is by the strict values. You can do it the way anti-gravity from 4 years ago did it, before we started making tier lists even, and sort it by mana. That's a super classic way to do things. And this was all back when it was on like a Google spreadsheet. And my favorite view, which I usually use because that's how I think about the game, is mana. You see us do card reviews on mana because it's the easiest way for me to find a card, right? Like if I'm looking at like, oh, this is a 4-drop, I think it's like mid value, it's here. It's a little bit of an expert's way to look at the meta, but I think you get a better picture of what's available to you in each of the phases of the game, right? Like what these cards are really up against on your curve. So that's kind of my overview of the Lightforge tier list. And by the way, remember, these are the things up here that I'm highlighting. These are the rarities. They're a little less useful now than they used to be, but make sure you're checking them if you want to find a card. I get so many questions that's like, oh, you're missing all these cards from your tier list. It's like, I'm not. You just accidentally unchecked the like epic one, and so you're not seeing any epic cards. And this top right corner thing is it lets you toggle on and off the underlines for the new cards. So you can more easily see new cards, or you can not care. It They used to be an offering bonus for new cards, so it was very useful. Now it's more like just a visual thing, so you can find them. And of course, there's a nice search bar where you can actually search. And I don't think a lot of people know or use this. You can actually search in a lot of different ways, right? You can pull cards to the top, you can hide cards, you can highlight them on the list, or just basic location. It's much better than Control F. So that's it for the introduction to the tier list. You will hear actual tier list values of every single card from for our next videos, and we'll tell you how we got there, and we'll tell you what considerations to make, and we'll tell you how to make best use of the cards, and we'll tell you how it affects the meta. So that's all coming up as we dig really deep into the Boomsday meta.
Sounds good. Talked a lot. Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right.